Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You're here because you need reliable, deeply understood knowledge, and, you need it without all the noise and information overload.
Exactly.
Today, we're tackling a skill that is, it's pretty much the ultimate global gateway, getting fluent and, more importantly, confident in speaking English.
Right. And we've synthesized a really powerful resource here that outlines a clear, super actionable path forward.
And it's not just about grammar rules, it's profoundly psychological, too.
It really is. Our mission today is to give you a genuine shortcut. And not by cutting corners, but by, making your effort so much more efficient. We're getting beyond just abstract motivation.
Yeah, the just be confident advice that doesn't help.
Exactly. We are delivering a complete step-by-step framework. We're calling it the 7 Pillars of English Speaking Improvement.
I like that. Pillars. It sounds solid.
It is. And it's designed specifically for the beginner learner, for the person who might know all the grammar rules but just freezes up when a real conversation actually starts.
Oh, we know that feeling, that paralysis. Our sources are so clear that the struggle is, it's less about your intellect and way more about emotion.
Absolutely.
Maybe you recognize that heavy feeling of shyness when you try to speak, or maybe you've had that frustration where you just can't find a practice partner. But I think the biggest one is that crippling nervousness about making a mistake.
That anxiety is universal. We really have to just say that up front. Everyone starts there. But the crucial thing, the idea we have to internalize right from the beginning is this. Speaking a language is not some innate talent.
It's not magic.
Not at all. It is fundamentally a skill. And just like any physical skill like, learning to type or drive a car, it improves systematically, incrementally, through practice.
So it's not about waiting for that magical aha moment where you suddenly wake up fluent.
No, it's about building a structure. It's about consistent application.
And to give you that structure, to take the randomness out of it, we've organized all the best advice into this system. So get ready, because we are diving deep into the 7 pillars that will, I think, fundamentally change your approach to speaking English. And we're starting with the 2 non-negotiable foundations. All right, let's start with the groundwork, because before you even get to the active physical part of speaking, you need 2 fundamental pillars to hold everything up.
Right. One is the input, what you're feeding your brain, and the other is the psychological resilience that stops you from sabotaging yourself before you even begin.
These are what you're calling the nonverbal foundations.
Exactly. They are so essential. If you just rush straight into trying to speak in, complex sentences without enough input and without managing your fear, you're just going to feel exposed and frustrated. It's a recipe for quitting.
So where do we start?
We're starting with pillar 1. It's maybe the simplest one, but it's also the one that gets ignored the most.
Pillar 1. And it's non-negotiable. Listen, every single day.
That's it. This is the core principle. You simply cannot produce what you haven't absorbed. Listening is the absolute prerequisite to confident speaking because it lets your brain just soak up the mechanics of the language passively, long before you have to reproduce them under pressure.
Okay, but I want to challenge this a little bit because I think a lot of learners feel that just listening is, it's passive. If I have study time, shouldn't I be spending it on a grammar workbook or memorizing verbs? Why is listening so critical for the act of speaking?
That's a critical question. And the answer is that listening trains you in ways that no amount of written study ever could. The sources point to 3 key areas.
Okay.
First, proper pronunciation. You have to hear how a native speaker forms sounds, how their tongue moves, how the air is released. Your brain needs that auditory map to follow.
Makes sense. Like a blueprint.
Exactly.
Right.
Second is the natural rhythm and the stress patterns. English is a stress-timed language, which means we don't give every syllable the same weight. That flow, that rhythm, it affects meaning and, whether people can even understand you.
Okay, so pronunciation and rhythm. What's the third?
The third is maybe the most subtle, but it's huge. It's common sentence structure, but specifically something called reduced speech.
Reduced speech. Okay, that's fascinating. Tell me more about that. How does listening teach us that?
Absolutely. So when you study English from a textbook, you learn the very formal written sentence. I am going to the store.
Right, very proper.
But in a real fast conversation, no native speaker says all those words so distinctly. They say, I'm going to the store.
Right, gonna, wanna, have to.
Exactly. The words get reduced, contracted, blended together. If you only ever study written English, you won't recognize gonna when you hear it. And then when you try to speak, you'll sound well, you'll sound like you're reading a textbook, a bit robotic.
So consistent listening trains your ear for what the language actually sounds like in the wild.
The reality of it, yes. Not the idealized version from a book.
So what should we be listening to? What are the specific kind of low-pressure materials we should be looking for?
Yeah, the key here is accessibility and simplicity. You want content that won't overwhelm you so you can focus on the rhythm and the structure, not on, looking up a bunch of complex vocabulary.
Okay.
The recommendations are things like simple English podcasts, YouTube videos that are aimed at learners, short dialogues, and, this is a really good one, children's stories in English.
The children's stories idea is brilliant. I love that. Because they use high-frequency words, the words you'll actually use every day, and the sentence structures are really predictable.
They are. You absorb the rhythm without having to constantly stop and pull out a dictionary. The goal isn't just to have it on in the background, but to engage with content that's just predictable enough for your brain to start seeing the patterns.
And the most encouraging part of this whole pillar is the time commitment. We're not talking about hours a day.
Not even close. This is the detail that makes this habit stick. The source is so explicit. Consistency trumps duration. It says that even 10 minutes a day is very helpful.
10 minutes. That's it.
10 minutes. I mean, that is so profoundly manageable. It's the consistency that builds those neural pathways. If you just commit to 10 minutes every single day while you're doing the dishes, on your walk, you're getting 70 minutes of targeted input a week.
And that low barrier to entry means you really don't have an excuse to skip it.
None. This is a routine snack, not a heavy meal. It's easy.
Okay, so 10 minutes of focused input, that's the fuel for the engine. But once the tank is full, we have to deal with the biggest roadblock of all. The thing that keeps the key from even turning.
The fear.
The fear.
Which brings us directly to Pillar 5, the essential mindset shift. And the core principle has to become this. Mistakes are not failures. They are an inherent, a necessary, and honestly, a welcome part of the learning process.
That is so hard to internalize, though, because, in school, a mistake gets a red mark. It's penalized.
It is. But the source gives us this piece of context that just totally resets the bar. Even native speakers make mistakes.
All the time.
All the time. I mean, if a native English speaker who lives and breathes this language can stumble over their words or search for a word or use some awkward phrasing, which we do constantly, then why on earth do we demand absolute perfection from a learner?
Yeah, who's actively translating in their head in real time.
Right. That expectation of perfection is just a guaranteed path to silence. We're not aiming for flawless academic delivery. We're aiming for clear communication.
Okay, so let's get practical. That inevitable moment happens. You're mid-sentence, you realize you used the wrong word or the wrong tense, and you freeze. What do we do in that moment instead of freezing?
There's a simple 3-step procedure from the source that you have to train yourself to use. It's a mental reflex. First, don't stop speaking.
Okay.
Second, don't feel embarrassed. And third, just continue speaking.
Just push through.
Just push through. That simplicity is everything because you can't execute some complex plan when you're panicking. You just need a directive.
Let's break that down, though. Why is not stopping so important?
Okay, so when you stop mid-sentence to correct a little error, 2 bad things happen. First, your cognitive load just skyrockets. You stop focusing on your message and you start obsessively focusing on the grammar rule you just broke.
And the conversation just dies.
It dies. And second, you're reinforcing that neurological link between making an error and feeling anxiety. By forcing yourself to just continue, even if it's awkward, you're prioritizing momentum. You're training your brain that the goal is communication, and tiny errors can be dealt with later.
I wonder, though, if I just ignore the mistake, won't I just be reinforcing a bad habit?
That is a fair challenge, but it's about balance. You don't ignore the mistake forever, you just ignore it in that moment. The source uses this great analogy. Every mistake is a small step toward better English.
So you make a mental note of it.
Exactly. You make a mental note, you move on, and later, when you're in your review time, that error becomes a piece of data. It's something you can study. You shift the analysis from a public failure to, private actionable feedback.
That completely reframes it. It's not a roadblock. It's a signpost. It's progress.
It is. And once you internalize that, you remove the biggest psychological hurdle, that fear of being judged, and you free up all this mental space for the next step, which is actually producing the language.
Okay, so we've got the foundations in place, input and mindset. Now we can shift to active production. This is where we get into the mechanical side of things, how to actually use your voice to make English sounds effectively.
Right. This is where we move from theory into reality. And we have to understand that producing language it's a physical skill. It's dynamic.
It's not enough just to know the rules in your head.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You have to train the muscles in your mouth to actually execute them smoothly.
Which brings us to pillar 2, which sounds deceptively simple. Speak out loud. But the core insight here is that speaking is a physical activity.
Exactly. The source makes a really strong point that so many learners just study with books, right? They treat it like it's history or math. But the muscles in your jaw, your tongue, your throat, that's the apparatus of speech.
Yeah.
And it requires training. It requires coordination and muscle memory.
It's like a sport for your face.
It really is. Those muscles have to learn to move quickly and accurately to make sounds that might not even exist in your native language.
This really connects with that running analogy we used earlier. If you want to build endurance, you have to actually run. Just reading books about running isn't going to do it.
That's it.
But let's get a little more technical. What specific physical training is happening when we speak out loud by ourselves?
We're training 2 main things. First is articulation. So think about the sound in English. It requires the tip of your tongue to touch the back of your front teeth. That position might feel completely bizarre if your native language doesn't have it.
Right. You can know the rule, but your tongue doesn't know how to get there fast enough.
Exactly. You hesitate, so you have to train the muscle. Second, we train the sequencing of sounds. Fluent speech requires your mouth to anticipate and move smoothly from one sound shape to the next. That only comes from physical repetition.
And the best part is, you don't need a partner for this. The source gives us these immediate practical methods for solo practice. Let's list them out, even the awkward ones.
They're so critical for building confidence in isolation. Okay, so the first is to read a short text and speak it aloud. This connects the visual word to the physical movement.
The second one is describing what you see around you. This is just pure, immediate application.
Yep. You're sitting in a room, you say, the chair is brown, the book is on the table. You're training your brain to recall vocabulary and use basic grammar on the spot.
The third method is for narrative building, talking to yourself about your day.
This one is huge. It forces you to construct little stories, past, present, future. You might rehearse what you're going to say tomorrow or talk about what you did yesterday. It simulates a conversation without any of the pressure.
And the last one ties right back to pillar 1.
It does. It's repeating sentences you hear from videos or podcasts. This is direct modeling. You're not just saying the words. You're trying to match the rhythm, the intonation, the pronunciation, exactly as you heard it. You're physically training your mouth to mimic the natural flow of English.
We have to acknowledge, though, that doing this, talking to your refrigerator, repeating phrases in the mirror, it can feel really strange. Maybe a little silly.
Oh, for sure. But the source is definitive on this. It may feel strange, but it really works. You have to embrace the awkwardness. That friction is what creates the skill. If you can move your mouth fluently when you're alone, your chances of doing it in a real conversation go way, way up.
Okay, so once you start to get that physical flow going, you run into the next mental trap, which is this desire for complicated vocabulary. Pillar 3 addresses this directly. Use simple English.
This is one of the most freeing pieces of advice for any beginner. The common track is this mistaken belief that to sound proficient, you have to use big or difficult words.
So you try to translate these really sophisticated ideas from your own language, and it just comes out clunky.
Clunky and halting, right. And the correction is so simple. Simple English is good English. Just use the easy words you already know.
Why is that so much more effective than, trying to cram a bunch of new vocabulary?
It all comes back to cognitive load. When you're speaking, your brain is juggling grammar, pronunciation, finding words, and listening all at the same time. It's a lot.
It's a huge multitasking effort.
It is. So if you force yourself to search your memory for some rarely used complex synonym, you overload the whole system. Everything grinds to a halt, you slow down, you hesitate, you lose your rhythm.
Whereas if you use simple, common words, the word-finding part is almost automatic, and that frees up your brain power to focus on the sentence structure and the flow.
That's exactly it. Simplicity doesn't mean simplistic. It means clarity. It means efficiency. The goal of language is to get your meaning across. If a simple sentence does that better than a complex, halting one, the simple sentence wins. Every time.
And the source gives us this perfect, concrete example that I think every learner should just memorize.
It's great. Okay, so consider the complex phrase. I desire to enhance my communication abilities.
which sounds very formal, very unnatural in a conversation. It just screams, I translated this.
It does. Now, compare that to the simple version. Just say, I want to improve my speaking.
So much better. It's natural, it's fluent, and it conveys the exact same information instantly.
Right. By sticking to high-frequency words like want and improve, you just avoid all the grammatical traps that come with trying to sound too formal. The lesson is so clear, you build complexity later on a solid foundation of clarity.
Okay, so we've trained the ear, we've conquered the fear, we've started moving the mouth with simple, efficient language. Now we get strategic. How do we make sure our study time is as functional as possible? Moving into strategic learning now, we're going to tackle one of the most inefficient study habits that so many learners fall into, which is just memorizing long lists of single words.
Right, which brings us to pillar 7. And this pillar encourages us to shift our focus entirely.
This might be the most efficient tip of them all for really speeding up fluency.
I think it is. The core insight is this. Fluent speaking doesn't use single words, it uses functional phrases.
So let's talk about that disconnect. If I know, say, 5,000 individual English words, why can I still struggle to string them together in a real conversation?
It's because words are just the bricks, but phrases are the pre-assembled walls. In a natural conversation, you don't build every sentence one brick at a time.
You grab chunks of language.
You grab chunks, collocations, idioms, common expressions, things that are already stored in your memory as a single unit. If you only know single words, you have to mentally find each one, arrange it grammatically, add the right preposition, all in a fraction of a second. It's just impossible under pressure.
So learning a phrase like catch up with as one single thing is way more efficient than learning catch and up and with and trying to assemble it on the fly.
Immensely more efficient. Phrases just reduce your cognitive effort. They're like these prepackaged tools you can just deploy instantly. And the sources recommend prioritizing specific, high-utility phrases. I like to call them conversational management tools.
Conversational management tools, I like that. They're like the life rafts that keep the conversation from sinking when you get into trouble.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So what are some of these essential phrases?
Well, we want to prioritize phrases that help you manage misunderstanding or buy yourself some time or signal your opinion. So, for example, can you repeat that, please?
Simple, polite, effective.
Instantly diffuses the stress. Or just, I don't understand. Direct, honest. It's a request for help.
My favorite one is, let me think.
Oh, that's a game changer. It's a fantastic time buyer. It fills the silence with a phrase that shows you're engaged, and it gives your brain, a crucial 3 to 5 seconds to organize your thoughts.
It's so much better than just dead air.
So much better. And another one is, in my opinion, it's a simple transition that frames what you're about to say. It gives the listener a heads up, and it gives you a standard structure to start with.
But I have to ask a question here. If a learner spends all their time just learning these phrases, aren't they going to become too reliant on them? Like, won't they neglect growing their actual deep vocabulary?
That's a necessary concern, but for a beginner, the benefit is foundational. The goal of learning these phrases is to build fluency and confidence first.
So you learn to walk before you try to run.
Exactly. Once you have the flow, once you can keep a conversation moving, you can start swapping out the simple words inside those phrases for more complex, nuanced ones. But the immediate benefit is that you just start to sound more natural, because this is what native speakers actually do to bridge the gaps in conversation.
It's all about communication efficiency. If a rare adjective is useful once a week, but I don't understand, is useful 10 times a day.
The phrase takes priority. You're learning the essential operating system of conversation first.
Okay, we have the whole structural framework now. Input, mindset, physical training, and strategic phrase learning. So now we move to the final 2 pillars, which are all about integration and consistency.
Right. This is about applying these skills in the real world and then building the habits that make sure the improvement actually lasts.
It's about sustainability.
Exactly. We're taking the skills we've learned in isolation and we're testing them in an interactive environment. And then we wrap it all up in a manageable daily routine.
Okay, pillar 4 is essential. Practice with a friend or online partner. We've talked a lot about solo practice, but at the end of the day, language is a shared tool. You have to use it with another person.
You do. The necessity of interaction really can't be overstated. When you're talking to yourself, you know what you're trying to say. But
Yeah.
when you talk to a partner, that's when you hit the real challenges.
Like responding to things you weren't expecting.
Or managing interruptions, or dealing with real-time misunderstandings. So the source says you have to find someone to practice with, a friend, a family member, or a dedicated online partner.
But I think the idea of finding a partner can create a lot of dread. People imagine these high-pressure, hour-long intellectual debates.
For sure. But the source material is fantastic here because it stresses low-stress practice. We have to immediately lower our expectations. The source says explicitly that you don't need to have long conversations. Even 5 minutes is good practice.
5 minutes. Again, that's so manageable. It reduces the commitment, which makes it easier to start and easier to ask someone to help you.
And it minimizes the anxiety.
But what do you talk about for those 5 minutes to keep it productive but also low stress?
The topics have to be accessible. They have to draw on the simple vocabulary and phrases you've already been working on. So things like your day, perfect for practicing past tense.
Right. Or your job or school.
Uses vocabulary you already know well. Your hobbies, that's always a low-stakes, easy topic.
And simple plans for the week. Good for practicing the future tense.
Exactly. All very simple, very accessible.
But what if? What if your practice partner, especially if they're a native speaker? What if they're an overcorrector? You know, the person who interrupts to fix every single tiny grammatical mistake. That could just destroy your confidence.
That is a critical implementation challenge. And the learner has to be proactive. You have to communicate your goal to your partner up front. Tell them, my goal today is fluency and momentum, not perfect grammar.
Set the rules of the game beforehand.
You have to, and if they keep correcting you, you can politely use one of your functional phrases. Thank you for that, but for now, can we just focus on me finishing my thought?
Yeah.
The ultimate goal here, and the source reiterates this, is practice, not perfection.
So if you get through the 5 minutes and you communicated your ideas, that's a win.
That is a successful session, regardless of any minor errors. Practice over perfection. That's the theme that runs through this whole framework.
All right, let's tie it all together with the final pillar that makes sure all this effort is sustainable.
Finally, pillar 6, build a daily routine. Without consistency, all of these pillars are just, nice ideas. Improvement in language is all about the compounding power of small daily habits.
Yeah, that idea of cramming for 2 hours every Sunday just doesn't work.
No, you burn out and you forget more than you retain.
This is where the source gives us an absolute gift, though. It's a clear, actionable schedule. We don't have to invent a study plan. We just have to follow the recommended 20-minute blueprint.
This blueprint is genius because of its balance. It makes sure you're covering all the critical components, input, output, structure, retention, in a session that's short enough to do every single day.
Okay, so break it down for us. What are the 4 5-minute blocks and how do they connect to the pillars we've talked about?
Okay, so first, 5 minutes of listening. That directly engages pillar 1. It warms up your ear, gets your brain back into the rhythm of English.
The essential warm-up.
Then, 5 minutes of speaking out loud. This is pillar 2, the physical practice. You could be describing your room or repeating sentences you just heard. This is your mouth's muscle memory workout.
Okay.
Next, 5 minutes of reading. This reinforces grammar and structure in context. It connects what you're hearing to how it looks written down. It bridges that gap between spoken fluency and written accuracy.
And the last 5 minutes.
5 minutes reviewing new words or phrases.
Yeah.
This is the retention part. You're actively locking in those new functional phrases from Pillar 7 or vocabulary you just learned. You're moving it from just passive recognition into your active recall.
What's so amazing about that is the internal loop it creates. The listening feeds the speaking, the reading reinforces the structure, and the review solidifies it all. It's a perfect closed system.
And the huge impact is tied to that time commitment. It's only 20 minutes. If you can consistently do this one manageable routine every day, you are guaranteeing you will make progress. It provides clear boundaries and a sense of accomplishment every single day.
The psychological benefit of that is just immense. You don't have to decide what to study. You just have to decide when to do it, 20 minutes a day. That is the commitment that will fundamentally change your relationship with English. #tag outro. And with that, we have successfully navigated all 7 pillars of English speaking improvement. We've synthesized all this expert advice that's really tailored for the challenge of building confidence from the ground up.
And just to quickly recap that journey, we started by building a foundation. Consistent, low-commitment listening and adopting that powerful mindset that a mistake is just data, not a failure.
Right. Then we treated speaking like a physical skill. We trained it by speaking out loud, by ourselves, using simple, clear language.
We prioritize those high-utility phrases over trying to memorize complex single words. And finally, we integrated everything into a short, manageable daily routine and hopefully tested it with a low-stress practice partner.
But remember the overarching truth from all of our sources. Improving your English speaking takes time. I guess you could say patience is the hidden pillar 8.
That patience is so vital because growth is never a straight line. You'll have good days and bad days. The essential reminders have to become your mantra.
Which are?
Practice every day, even if it's only for 5 minutes. Speak out loud, don't rush, and never ever compare your own internal progress to someone else's public performance.
And above all,
don't be afraid. The absolute worst thing that can happen is you speak a little less fluently than you hoped. And that is still infinitely better than just staying silent.
you now have the full blueprint. The path to fluency isn't built on these huge leaps of genius. It's built on a series of small, consistent, and maybe slightly awkward steps that you take every single day.
And to leave you with one final thought, a challenge for tomorrow, really based on this whole philosophy of consistency. If the power of the 20-minute habit is just in starting small, what is the single 5-minute element from that blueprint? Listening, speaking, reading, or reviewing.
No.
What's the one piece you can absolutely guarantee you will do first thing tomorrow?
Just start there.
Just start there. Build that one successful habit, and the rest will follow.
That's a wrap on this deep dive. Implement your 20-minute blueprint, keep speaking out loud, and we'll coach you next time.